Boom. Alright, Enrique Sultano here. 34 minutes. I didn't know how much time I had, but I have 34 minutes. Um, I think that's enough time. I'm drinking. I'm almost done here. But that's enough time. Let's, you know what? I've been having fun talking about video games, right? We're talking about strategy video games, and, like I've presented a dilemma because there's all these sociological views out there in the world. Um, like look at fucking what's his face, that Italian guy, and he wrote this treatise on basically this type of stuff that I'm talking about right now. We're talking about video games, and we're talking about sociology, and we're talking about what makes a tribe strong, right? Um, fucking what's his name? I forgot what his name was. But Machiavelli. That's it, Machiavelli. So we have Machiavelli. And like at one point in time, like I was in horror. Like I was in total like horror. Oh my god, like I'm an American and I love America. I do. But I was listening to this one American general, and there was this program that I was listening to, and they were talking about Machiavelli. And this one American general says, oh, I read my Machiavelli, right? as if that's something to be proud of, right? But Machiavelli lost. Not only did Machiavelli lose, but like we always hear that stupid phrase, like, and it like I feel like an old cranky man. Like, oh my god, I totally feel like an old cranky man because I hear this stupid phrase over and over again. And what is the stupid phrase? The stupid phrase is, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." Which is totally not historically accurate. It's stupid. It sounds wise to all you stupid idiots out there. But who is the man that said this? Right? The man that said this was a Muslim man. And just like Machiavelli died in custody. Like he was a fucking loser in like the real world. Machiavelli was a fucking loser in the real world. Because nobody trusted that bitch. Damn, like, oh my god, this is all so fucking simple. Like, nobody trusted that bitch, so he lost. And so why the fuck are U.S. generals taking the advice of a bunch of fucking losers? Like, oh my god, it's so stupid. That Muslim guy who said the enemy of my enemy is my friend died as a prisoner of the guy who defeated him. Right? Duh. Like, oh my god, like we look at like people talk about like intellectually divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. But it's like Oh my god. So, what am I talking about right now? Oh my goodness. I'm talking about video games. That's what I'm talking about. Mm. Like that's a big question. That is the big question because like we're trying to make video games. We're just trying to have fun. But in trying to have fun and in trying to make video games, we gotta figure out what's scientifically real. Like, what makes a tribe strong? Truly, what makes a tribe strong? What makes a tribe weak? Um, these are grand questions that, I'm not saying I have the answer to. Fuck. I don't give a shit. But I do because it's interesting. What makes a tribe strong? What makes a tribe weak? Um, I guess one thing that we should go into would be merchant societies, right? Because, like, in the historical narrative, merchant societies get a lot of glory. They do. But all it takes is one loss for these merchant societies to totally disappear, right? Like, the Roman way was, hey, if you broke a treaty, we're gonna put a colony in your territory. If you're a treaty breaker, because you lose rights to your territory if you're a treaty breaker. But attitudes like this are bad for profits, right? But at the same time, I think the Romans opened up a more free market society. In that like in India right now, you have like if you want to move from one place to the next, you have to go through all these tariffs and taxes. But the Romans broke down all this shit, and it was about competition. And there were a lot of merchants out there who were talented merchants who loved this competition. Like they weren't the sons or daughters of powerful people. They were just talented people. And in this Roman world, they could succeed just by being a talented person. Um, the Roman world broke down all of the burdensome tariffs that divide. Um, and so you had this Italian society that was, making deals with each other. They were prospering together rather than you have all these stupid fights happening, right? And I think that was the power of the early Roman Republic, and I think that was obvious, like especially when Hannibal invaded. Like you had people who were not Latin. They were Italic, but they were not Latin, but they were choosing the Latin side because they liked the justice of it all. They liked the laws of the Roman Republic. And the Roman Republic was more about merit and they were meritorious rather than they were born to the right person. And this was one of the powers. This is the exact thing that defeated Hannibal, right? The exact thing that defeated Hannibal was that you had all these Italic peoples who were choosing Rome rather than Phoenicia. And again, like all merchant societies disappear with the first loss, right? And it would be the same with the English. Like, let's say America never had been. Let's do a thought experiment. Let's say America had never had been, and you have the history of the world without America ever having been. Well, what would happen? Like, the first big loss of the English means the entire destruction of the English language. It was only like, if you look at the power of the Roman Latins, they were more colonistic and land based than than merchant than merchants. And at the corruption of the Roman Empire, you have a bunch of corrupt Greek type merchants, definitely. A bunch of corrupt aristocrats who praised a false freedom, as Nostradamus would say. And it was Caesar who was in the faction fighting against the corruption of these elites in this so-called free society. But I don't know. Okay, what are we talking about right now? We're talking about I kept talking about video games. That's what I'm talking about. Video games, like I would like my video games to be more scientifically accurate. I would. And I've talked about this in language. But like I've also, like, in some of the other video game videos that I've made, I've talked about like the reality of it all. Oh my god. You have the fucking reality of it all. Like, okay, here we go. Let me give you an example. Okay, I got a good example here for you. And this is a movie. It's a movie called Back to School. And it's like an 80s movie, I think it is. Back to School. But like, in this movie, at one point in this time, this older man, he goes back to school, he goes back to college, and his son is in college at the same time. And so he's going back to school, right? Obviously. But he gets into this economics class, right? And you have this economics teacher talking about all of this fancy, fancy economic stuff. Like, oh my god, he's talking about all this fancy economic shit. But this older man who's a successful businessman, right? He's a rich man. He ends up disagreeing with this highfalutin intellectuul. And basically, what what one of the amazing things he says is that, hey, if you want a successful business, then you gotta grease the local politicians. You know, you gotta get with the other local um you gotta get with the other local businessmen, right? Like I heard this story one time. This is apparently a real story. I was watching on the internet. It's like a news type thing, and they were talking about this story. And they were talking about the story about this Latin American man, right? And this Latin American man, he wanted to start up a bakery, and so he did. He started up a bakery, and he ended up like working and saving in order to get all the proper material, right? Because he has to follow all the regulations. So he has to get all the proper equipment, and he did. He got everything he needed to start up his bakery. And then and it was going good after he first started it up, but like not too soon afterwards, like someone like robbed his store and just destroyed all the machines, right? And like I'm listening to this story and I'm like, OMG, like who did this, right? Right, well, who did this? Right, well, according to the story, it was just some gangs or whatever, right? But according to the to what I see, it was the other competitors, right? And so that's why I find this back to school stories funny. It's like, hey, you gotta get in good with the other merchants of the town, because the other merchants of the town will be gangster towards you, and uh, they will send criminals in to destroy your business. Like that's just the reality of our world. Like, oh my god, like that's just fucking reality. Um, because you, I mean, you like this guy's business obviously got raided by his competitors, but they probably employed criminals and criminals, you know. So if these criminals got caught, then they're the ones who are gonna get framed. But like, oh my god, like that's not the nature of reality, right? This fantasy world that this elite intellectual is talking about. Well, this other successful businessman is talking about the reality of a successful business. Like oh my god, I could have been a rich man, but like I realized that this shit is true. Like this back to school stuff is true. But like for me, I also realized that there's this Chinese saying that if you stick your head up above the crowd, it's gonna get chopped off, and that's the world we're living in, right? So I'm like, I'd rather like not get my head chopped off, you know. So like, why be successful? All you successful people, you're being set up, dumbasses. But but you know, at the end of the day, we're talking about video games, so So, and again, I continue to talk about this, and I will continue talking about this. But my claim is that, I think the early Roman Republic, before they got corrupted by the Greeks, the early Roman Republic was truly about virtue. Like you have the so-called Saint Paul, right? So-called Saint Paul, and he says, in one of his writings, he says, you have men who will interpret interpret things cynically, and then men who will interpret things purely, right? And I think I think Hermes Trismegistus talks about the same thing, basically. Um, I mean, it's all about motivation. Like, oh my god, like, what the fuck is motivation? Like, shit. But you have some people out there who think that all motivation is cynical and bad, and though you might pretend to have a good motivation, like ha ha ha, not really, and that's basically what people talked about the early Roman Republic as, like these cynical, evil, immoral Greeks would talk about the early Roman Republic cynically, and everybody around the Mediterranean would talk about the early Romans as cynically, because they didn't believe in the law, right? They don't believe in virtue or justice. But I think there's an argument to be said that a virtuous society is a strong society. Like I was reading this, or I was listening to this thing on this Turkish man, and he was writing about the Western, the Balk people of the Balkans, because that's who he had contact with. But he was talking about these people of the Balkans, and he was saying that, hey, they're all effeminate, unlike us strong Turkish people. Now this was the beginning of the Ottoman Empire, because eventually the Ottomans became effeminate and weak. But at this early stage, you have this man talking about these men of the Balkans, and they were talking about them, and he was saying, hey, they're effeminate and weak. That's who these people. While us Turkish people, are able to go through hardship and survive and be strong. Um, and so yeah, no, I think it's fucking obvious. Um, there is a strength to quote unquote morality, and I think if you look at Edward Bernays, like Edward Bernays talks about the manufacturing of consent, right? And so it's all about tricking people into being into a false morality in the Western world. But there's a strength to morality, and I think Edward Bernays proves this, because he's trying to manipulate the moral man. Um, but again, like we go back to this Herodotus story. We go back to this Herodotus story where no matter how strong a society you can be, betrayal fucks up the whole algorithm. It really does.